Everyone, in this webinar, we're going to go over holistically what it takes to get an app made. This is going to focus less on the development and the technical how-to, and just go over every process from having the idea to getting it made in that technical portion, to marketing it and to building an audience, the whole picture. I'm going to be using an example of one of our apps from Pufferfish software, Visual Routines, throughout the webinar. So when I say, oh, you should use this principle when designing apps, I will explain how we used it to make Visual Routine. Or when I say you should advertise the app this certain way, I will say this is how we use that for success in Visual Routine. That way you have a picture of how it should be applied. All right, let's get started. First step, of course, of making an app is design. This has nothing to do with getting the actual app working on a device. It's more about determining the idea, beginning to build an audience around it, and at the end of this stage, you should have a prototype. Going to have a successful app starts with whether or not you can critically examine your app idea. For an app, the idea needs to fulfill certain requirements before it can be made into a great app. Next is keep it small in scope. This means that your app should only do one thing, and it should do that one thing well. It's really fun to be out having a beer with friends saying, we should make an app. Yeah, and it can do this. Yeah, and it can do that as well. And you start piling on more things it can do. In reality, apps that try and do tons of things don't do any one of those things well. In order for an app to do something well, it has to focus on the one thing it does. The thing that is really fun to say is, wow, this feature is so cool. I love the accelerometer of the iPhone. I want to make an app that uses the accelerometer. Some features of the iPhone or Android phones are really cool, but you can't build an app solely around utilizing one of the features. The purpose of the app should always come before a cool feature. Don't include features for their own sake. You need to think about how your app is better than the competition. The App Store is so saturated that everyone has competition. There is no app for which there are no competitors. If you don't know who your competitors are, find them and determine how your app idea is going to be better than their app. The competitive difference is the higher the chance that people are going to use your app over theirs. If you skimp on this, you can pay for it down the road. That's one of the mistakes we made at Pufferfish software very early on, is we made apps, but we didn't really think about how much better they were going to be than our competition. We said, we'll just make it better, but we didn't include any additional features or any functionality that our competition didn't. So we didn't get that traction early on that we should have. The thing is that everyone likes to say they don't want their ideas stolen, and that on this assumption that ideas are what make apps really valuable, but it's not. It's the execution. A handy example is Facebook and MySpace. They have feature differences between their apps, but they have the same idea. You make a profile and you connect to other people and essentially connect the world. Facebook executed on this idea much better, and so Facebook became a successful company. Can you hear me? I just saw a message saying that they weren't able to hear anything. I'm sorry. I'll continue. Since Facebook executed on their idea thank you, David. Since Facebook executed on their idea much better, they became the more successful company. And after you've looked at your app with a critical eye and trimmed it down to that core goal that it does better than its competition, you should be able to communicate it easily. It doesn't matter how great your idea is if people you try and tell it to don't understand. For instance, if you're making a game but you can't explain the premise of the game to your friend, how can your friend then tell their other friend about the game? And how can they tell other people? How can anyone tell anyone about your app if they can't understand it? So if this is a problem, is to go talk to people about your idea and not just post on the internet or maybe ask your mom how it sounds. Go talk to people in your community who are maybe business connections or someone you met at the grocery store in line. People who aren't familiar with you. You receive feedback about your app which is quote-unquote wrong. The person giving the feedback won't understand what your app does. Everyone's gut instinct is to correct them and say, oh no, this is what my app does, you misunderstood. You can do that, but the fact that they didn't understand what your app was represents valuable feedback, and it tells you that you should communicate what your app does more clearly. Done all of this, I need to go to the next slide. You know you're finished your idea when you tell people about your app and they're able to answer these two questions. What your app is and what it does and why they should download it as opposed to the other apps. If someone you're talking to can go then tell a third person these two things, the idea is ready. But your app idea is ready to be validated. That means actually testing it out with the wider world to see if it would sell. Make sure the app idea is coherent and easy to communicate, and now it's time to introduce the app to the world. By making a website or a web page for your app idea. Even if you don't have the app idea already, but you want to make the website or page to show the internet and see what the feedback is. If your app is for a company and your company already has a website, that's great. Just whip up another page on that website, put an email collection field on it, and you're ready to go. If you don't already have a website, you can go to launchrock.co, and they're a free landing page service. They make you a website for free that has an email collection field that you just made, and go promote it on the internet. I'm not talking heavy-duty paid promotion or marketing campaigns. Just go on the internet or to a local group and let them know about your idea. Software, we go online where people with autism congregate and tell them about our new app idea. Discussion and criticism while you're doing this, just like you did when you're talking to people in real life. You don't want to turn down a chance for discussion or feedback. You can start generating signups on your email list. You can measure how well your app idea is selling by how many signups you get. And once you get those signups, don't just let them sit there on a list. Actually send them emails. Ask them about their opinion of your idea, what improvements they would make, whether or not they would buy this app. Keep them involved in your app idea. This is actually an area where we failed early on with visual routine. When we had the idea, all we did was put out a Facebook post saying, hey, what if we made an app about routines? Some people gave some thumbs up and said, oh, that sounds nice, but we didn't do anything more. We went right ahead developing, even though we didn't know if it would sell. You asked about that web address again? launchrock.co. I'll probably put it up on the screen at the end of the webinar for you. But that's the core, is get those emails, promote that web page, and interact with people who sign up on your list. Start thinking about the business model of your app. It's like a huge 10-page business plan. It's really just deciding what your whole venture is going to look like. And there are two basic options, the long tail and the flagship. The long tail is what Pufferfish Software's model is. We make 5 different apps, but they're all fairly similar in function, and they're aimed at the same audience. We recycle a lot of techniques and tactics with each of the different apps because they have similar functions and they're aimed at the same audience. Our marketing and branding is unified under the Pufferfish Software banner. The benefit